Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. My name is Tatiana Rose. This is my show. Welcome. um, Normally, I have Josh on with us, but he's not here. And hold on a second. Anyway, I guess I'm just gonna have to wing it today by myself, which is totally fine because I have two wonderful guests. The first guest is going to be Ed Eykholt of LivelyGig. Hi, Ed. How's it going?
Hi, Tatiana. Great, thank you.
Great. So we're both musically motivated. So why don't you give me a little bit of background of how you've gotten involved in the space and what your background was before you even went into this crazy thing called Bitcoin.
Yeah, cool. You're a lot more musically motivated than I am, but yeah, I come from a musical family, and it was so nice meeting you in San Diego during the conference a couple months ago. Yeah, my background is largely in corporate settings where I've been a product manager, program manager, product owner kind of role, and I'm from the Seattle area, and I started reading about Bitcoin and got so fascinated with it about mid 2013, and thought about well, what's going on in Seattle, and how can I get involved in Bitcoin? It's one of those things that once you read about it and understand it and all the implications, you want to get involved, and you go down the rabbit hole. Um, so since there were no startups or none that I knew about at the time in the Seattle area, I asked myself, well, how can I apply, my skills around project management and so forth, and then started noodling on the idea that became LivelyGig ultimately. If you think about how project management is done, it starts with an agreement of, the either the project manager or the enterprise with some talent to do work, right? If something as simple as a task, there's a contract, that might not be, a legally binding contract, but a team member says, yes, I can commit to doing this in this time frame, and then there are dependencies and so forth. So kind of reduced the vision from, all of project management down to the work contracts, and then looked into freelancing as our first marketplace. And so then, went to a hackathon in the Texas Bitcoin conference in early 2014, and won an award there and got really excited about LivelyGig. And then I couldn't stop thinking about the concept and Bitcoin and so forth. So it was distracting me from my day job. And so I started full-time at LivelyGig in June of 2015, and at this around the same time, my co-founder Greg Meredith and I agreed that we would co-found the company, and then been working on it full-time since then. Very excited about everything.
So can you explain to me what LivelyGig is? Like, I'm a sixth grader.
Yeah, so
Or a musician, because I think it is for us, so that's why.
oh yeah, for sure. So LivelyGig's creating a freelance marketplace that's going to allow any two people to directly connect through their social professional network to directly form a contract for work, and that can optionally involve escrow with Bitcoin, and then they can settle that payment anywhere in the world. So we think this is going to open up new patterns of work and employment that don't exist today, as Bitcoin enables so many new use cases.
Okay. So that seems pretty straightforward. So it would be like a jobs board Craigslist.
Yes, we're also, and there are freelance marketplaces today, and there's even at least one that I know about that, in terms of mainstream freelance boards that take Bitcoin. Fiverr is one of those.
Mhm.
And then there are also some, but the big ones are Upwork and Freelancer.com. Those are really huge markets, very successful platforms. And then there's also some other job boards in the Bitcoin space. Coinality and XBT Freelancer are two of the popular ones, and there's a couple others. And then And there's also obviously payroll type of stuff going on as well. So a lot of exciting future for this whole marketplace around work in Bitcoin.
So why did I think that this was music related?
Well, yeah,
It for gigs? Like, would you be making specialized versions of your software? I guess that's what you'd consider it, for different markets or something, or how would that work?
yeah. So gig means in the music business, performance or a contract for performance. But freelancers also use that more generally for any type of short-term work or period of work. And so certainly we could and will develop over time specialized communities. You might have a content writer community. You might have one around software development for Java or a particular specialty, and you might have one around music. And then also you joined the Synereo community hangout a couple months back. That's Synereo. And we're working pretty closely with the Synereo team. We share the same technology stack, and our co-founder, Greg Meredith, is also the CTO of Synereo. So, and Synereo's focus is a decentralized social network, and musicians are one of their target markets that go pretty well because they will have a economy that's based around what they call attention economy or amplification of content with a sort of a promotion token around their amps. But so anyway, that might be some of the reason why you were associating us, either because of the word gig or because of the conversation on Synereo.
Okay, good. Well, I was just thinking, I have a friend of mine who had a booking agency in New York. She actually still does. They do book music mainly in Nashville, Los Angeles, and New York, but she's also booked these nationwide tours, and she's been seeing a problem where artists and venue holders are not really able to connect so easily. I mean, there's things like
Yeah.
distribution, but of course, I want to bring her into the Bitcoin space just because I'm selfish. But I think that that would be a really good use case. That seems to be a problem where, what are the terms? How, as an artist, are you making sure that you're going to get paid for what you're doing? And if it's something that's broad enough and easy enough to fill out, I think that's pretty exciting. So where are you guys at with the project then? Like, when are you going to be testing it out and stuff?
Yeah, so our platform has been in development and for about 4+ years in terms of the back end stack, which is a decentralized content management platform or content distribution network, I should say, and that's called SpecialK. It's been used in one commercial setting already. It's open source software. And like I mentioned, the Synereo team is also using that. And then LivelyGig is building uh, our protocols and user interface on top of that. We've been working on it for about 8 months now. That's the whole business formation and so forth. And if we have time later in this first half hour, I can even show you some screenshots. We're probably about, and this depends on our investment and ability to raise money and hire additional folks, but we're probably going to have an alpha experience for a limited group within a couple of months, and then probably a beta within 4 to 6 months, where we'll have actual transactions going on the platform and so forth, and then hopefully launch later this year in 2016.
So you said that you were using a different blockchain, is that right? Which one is it? Or are you using Bitcoin? I mean, you're using Bitcoin because people can pay each other with Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, so we'll have the first MVP will have Bitcoin as the escrow, and so our first concept is we'll use just multi-sig wallets to set up the escrow and allow the freelancer and their client or the buyer and seller more generally to use a multi-sig wallets that we help set up. And that's the use of blockchain that we're planning. The SpecialK technology stack has its own persistence model for things such as the work contract and user data and so forth.
Okay, cool. That sounds interesting. So, do you want to give us a little demo? I mean, keeping in mind we're broadcasting on a bunch of different networks right now, so a lot of this is going to be a podcast. So I'm a little hesitant to use the visual aid, but if people want to watch it, they could go to youtube.com/forevermore Tatiana. I'm going to be reposting it. Originates on the Liberty.me channel if they need the video aids, so to speak. But do you want to kind of walk me through what that experience would be like?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. So I'll talk around these slides. This really isn't a click-through demo, but just wanted to share some of the concepts of what we have. So the key thing is that we're setting up peer-to-peer agreements between employers and freelancers, and so they're going to enter a direct contract between themselves, and they'll have optional escrow. And our platform will have a number of different views around it. We're going to have direct connections between individuals, and they'll be able to message each other. So there'll be essentially a social and professional network with groups. In addition, just like other job boards, we'll have jobs and talent profiles. But really what's at the heart of LivelyGig is this work contract. And so there'll be negotiation back and forth between the freelancer employer about, for example, rate is often a topic of discussion, right? Or sometimes schedule is. And then once they indicate that they'll want to have escrow as part of that, which I think is going to be the typical case, we'll help them through the process of setting up a wallet. We're looking at copay, which is, I think, a great user experience for their wallet, where we would start the process of setting up that copay wallet. And copay is a multi-sig wallet, so in this case, we'll set up a 2 of 3 wallet for the buyer, the seller, and a moderator, and that initial private key for the moderator would be LivelyGig. And so we'll walk through and help them set up, and they will then fund that wallet, and then the buyer and seller will decide when those funds should be released, and then only if there's a problem would they escalate to the moderator, and then LivelyGig may moderate ourselves, or we may have a marketplace for moderators, and certainly ultimately we will, where those disputes would be worked out. And so that's kind of the essence of the structure. And then after the work is done, there would be a feedback mechanism where the individuals in the marketplace would develop reputations. And this is very, very similar to how the reputation aspect exists in the current freelance marketplaces today. Does that give you an idea?
Yeah, no, you know what? I was looking at that, and it makes me think about how people talk about smart contracts, and oh, you can make smart contracts. And I hear about that, and I nod, and I say, yeah, that would be great. But actually, I don't really know how to do it. Are there other companies that have made it as easy as what you've done? Because I think that this is the perfect use case for using the smart contract. I mean, the most basic one, right? I'm gonna come in, I'll clean your house, and you're gonna give me $2 million, or let's say 1,000. We'll call it a cool grand. And to be able to do that in a way that people can understand. Are other people trying to solve the problem in this way? And why did you guys use the copay wallet? I mean, did you guys partner with them? Are you exclusive to them, or how does that work?
Yeah, the first question. Yeah, I believe that the work contract is a really important use case. Smart contract. Nick Szabo coined that phrase actually before Bitcoin, and that implies that the whole contract is on, at least today, that it's on a blockchain, and the escrow part of the solution I just described is on the blockchain. In a sense, even multi-sig wallets are a smart contract, right? You're paying when you deposit into a multi-sig address or a pay-to-script hash. You're actually putting a deposit in a contract in essence, right? And then so you're saying, oh, any two of these three parties with the signing private keys can release these funds. So that's the smart contract in the Bitcoin sense of what I showed you. The rest of the aspects are a protocol for work, but they're not on the Bitcoin blockchain. So some people wouldn't call that a smart contract in a Bitcoin maximalist sense. So the reason we are looking at Copay, and we haven't locked in this decision, and we don't have any kind of exclusive agreement or partnership with Copay, which is sponsored by BitPay actually, in terms of the development. But I really like their user model. They allow the setup of these multi-sig wallets without sharing. Without having sort of a centralized approach. Like if you look at a lot of the multi-sig solutions out there, like in Armory or BitGo, they're more focused either on individuals or corporate governance kind of scenarios. But Copay has a really great user interface, and allows anyone with a Copay wallet to initialize this process and say, hey, I want to invite you and Kirk to this 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet, and I share a QR code that's that invitation code, and then you accept those, and then all of a sudden the 3 of us have a 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet. And so it's really quite nice that way. Did I answer your questions, or was the third question in there?
No, I think that sums it up. Interesting. So I have like the gears turning in my head, but I don't have any questions right now.
Well, very awesome. Do you want me to tell you a little bit more about the kinds of typical questions we get at this point?
Sure, why not? Yeah, let's
Sure.
go. I'm still thinking.
Okay, great. Yeah, so one of the questions I get a couple of questions. One is, will we only accept Bitcoin? And the short answer is for now, yes. That our beta will be Bitcoin only.
Is Shapeshift though?
Yeah, possibly. We just need
to integrate with, or like yeah, okay, yeah, I think Shapeshift will work, but you probably don't even want to get into the mess of that, because then you have to deal with the accounting, which actually our next guest is going to talk to us about accounting, Kirk Phillips. But yeah, if you start messing with other cryptocurrencies, all of a sudden at the end of the year you're stuck thinking, oh my god, what the hell am I going to do for my taxes?
Yeah, we'll start with Bitcoin and most likely the Copay wallet. For startups, focus is a challenge, and doing too many things, and we've already got lots of ambitious goals, as you might imagine from the screenshots I was showing. And so yeah, we ultimately would love to take any cryptocurrency as payment, but the particulars of how escrow works is a very specific to one cryptocurrency initially. The way
with dollars, if they want to, do they have to use crypto? I mean, do they have to use Bitcoin? I guess being
so Copay is only a Bitcoin wallet, but I think our beta wouldn't even require escrow. And so let's say you and I form a contract. We could say we're not going to use LivelyGig's escrow mechanism. We're going to handle payment some other way. So another aspect that we'll likely introduce is our own crypto token for usage of our platform. LivelyGig needs to make money in some way, and there's basically 2 ways. One is through this crypto token access token, excuse me, for using our platform. So we may have a crowd sale beta or sometime later, um, to create these coins and to raise money. And B, then the other way to make money is through transaction fees or commission off of the amount that goes through escrow. And so we have to make some decisions around the revenue model and whatnot, especially if we weren't going to require escrow on every transaction.
Okay. Do you have any other questions that people usually ask you guys?
Yeah. So why Bitcoin? And of course, Bitcoin is great, but we're also betting that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will really become more mainstream, as all your viewers probably agree, but not the general population doesn't necessarily agree with that statement. So that's the first bit of skepticism. The other one is, how will LivelyGig differentiate from existing online freelance marketplaces? One of the ways is by lower commissions. So the job boards today, or sorry, freelance marketplaces today, their take is between 8 and 13%, depending if you include all the membership agreements and so forth. We should be able to lower that dramatically with Bitcoin because the transaction fee is so small, and if we have private peer-to-peer connections and contracts, then we should be able to allow this to scale through that and through the decentralized platform. So I don't know what our percentage is ultimately going to be. Maybe it'll be in the 2 to 3% range, but that should open up a lot of new players for us, and especially in countries that are find Bitcoin very appealing.
So you're also going to be kind of creating new markets, though, for people to become those escrow agents. When you say so? I mean,
Yeah. So
additional services, you're not going to keep them all in-house. There's going to be other people that are trying to provide those services. How are you going to get those people on board?
short answer is I don't know yet. And we're, Open Bazaar is a very interesting project to watch as they are doing some of the same things I'm describing. They're creating a marketplace for goods and services, primarily focused on goods, and they will have a moderator marketplace that they'll build out. In fact, when I listen to why did Andreessen Horowitz and others invest in OB1? And OB1's response on how they will make money, the moderator marketplace was one of the primary use cases of the way that Open Bazaar may make money. So there are one consideration is, where is going to be the marketplace that has a reputation for being a good for being a good moderator. We probably should strike up a conversation with Bitrated and other kind of reputation-based platforms, and those are areas we need to work on.
Okay. Well, I mean, now you know what's on the list.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I think that I'm going to bring on Kirk up next, but is there anything else that you want to kind of tell people? Like, what if they want to be part of your beta testing? What if they want to catch up with you? Where could they go?
Oh, thanks very much. So our website is www.livelygig.com. There's an email, sign me up for email. We send out about an email once a month with an update, so please sign up. We also have a link on the website for joining our Slack channel where we can have dialogue. Follow us on Twitter, which is @LivelyGig. And then also, when you join the Slack community, we have weekly community hangouts. Currently, we're doing those with the Synereo team, and those are at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays. And we put that notice on Slack and Twitter right before that, so that's a great way to join in live. We're also looking for investors and partners. If any of you watching have inclination to say, well, that'd be great. I have a market that would be perfect on LivelyGig's platform as we build it. Would love to hear from you.
Very cool. I really like it. I'll get back with you about some ideas that I've had once I've had a chance to kind of process them.
Oh,
Um,
that's so awesome, Tatiana. Thank you.
oh, hey, you wanna do something with me? So on Let's Talk Bitcoin, there's a magical phrase for people. I always do it at the end, but today I'm gonna sneak it in right in the middle. But do you want to come up with one? It's either a word or a phrase. It can't be like Ed is the coolest, because then everybody with a different name will feel bad. But
let's go with freelance.
freelance, all right, cool. So freelance is the word of the day for the magic word for the LTV audience. We're also on Liberty.me, on LRN.FM, and IPM Nation. So hello to all our listeners out there. Cool. All right. Well, it was really great hanging out with you, and maybe when I'm in Los Angeles, in California, or even just in general that side of the country, we can get together. But please keep me posted on how everything goes, and thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Awesome. Take care. Bye now. All right, great. So our next guest is Kirk Phillips. Kirk is a person that does things that I never want to do, which is taxes. Not that I want to avoid my taxes, I like to pay them. I love paying my government all of my money. But no, seriously, I don't want to get in trouble. So it's good to have a friend that knows how to do this stuff. And considering it is coming up to the deadline for us to pay our money to Uncle Sam, I thought that Kirk could give us a hand. He's written a new book. He's doing all sorts of cool stuff. And hey, Kirk, how's it going? Nice to see you again.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for the listeners at home who are not familiar with you, can you give me a little bit of your background, and also how did you get into cryptocurrency?
Sure. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad's a serial entrepreneur, although that term wasn't used at really the time when he was doing most of the different businesses that he was up to. And then I also studied accounting in my university and became a CPA. So I worked in public accounting for some of the big firms, some small firms, private industry, as well as having started many of my own businesses and real estate, restaurants. So I've done a whole variety of different things, including business consulting now. And so that's how I got to this point as far as being a business advisor. And it was, I believe it was the last week of 2013 or the first week of 2014. So basically the beginning of the year 2014. There was a friend, more of an acquaintance that happened to be over at my house. She said, "Hey, Kirk, I want to get some advice from you. My husband and I want to spend $850 to buy a computer so we can mine some Bitcoin. What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I heard the word, and that was about it." So I said, "Well, I'll have to I'll have to look into it and get back to you." And then, of course, here we go. And that's where the book came from, from being asked that question. So I just started down the journey to answer the question, ended up down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, which is a similar experience that many Bitcoiners share, and that's how I got into Bitcoin and just thought it was. I'm a huge fan of technology as it is in the business world. So since Bitcoin is the technology, that's where my fascination came from, and that's kind of how the whole thing ties together for me, and why I think Bitcoin is so great.
Okay, very cool. So tell me, what kind of services do you offer, and like well, let's not do that. Let's talk about the book first. So tell me more about this book, and then we'll talk about how you can help get people on the right side of the law.
Sure.
You're supposed to tell me about the book now.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know if you're going to ask me another specific question.
No, I'm just
sure.
About
so that was really, that story, that's how I got into the book, is when I was asked that question. And so what I wanted to do is to kind of exploit my credentials, if you will, because research continues to show that CPAs are the most trusted professional of all professionals. So because there's so much skepticism, I believe, still today among the public in general, and even among CPAs. I remember I shared this book with a fellow CPA, and they were completely skeptical. I was kind of blown away by their reaction to it. And I think it's just because people just don't understand enough about it. So I just wanted to exploit that and to put a stake in the ground and say this is the point of view from somebody that you can inherently trust, as a certified public accountant. And I just wanted to just really tell my story about it, tell my point of view, and just provide some practical advice, really coming from a business perspective, because there's lots of books out there at this point about Bitcoin, but I believe this is the first that's taken a kind of a business angle on the whole thing. So, and then also, Walter Wriston, who was a former Citigroup chairman, famously said that information about money is almost more valuable than money itself. So I say that similarly, that Bitcoin, the information about Bitcoin is more valuable than Bitcoin itself. So that's really what this book is about, that understanding what Bitcoin is about and really the infinite landscape that this technology provides today and will continue to provide is more valuable than Bitcoin itself.
So, I'm really excited about Bitcoin, right? I'm not as excited as a small business owner for dealing with it. And last year, I did all this business, and not that much business, but, a fair amount of business in cryptocurrency, and I didn't just stick with Bitcoin. And now I'm like every day kicking the can down the road, kicking it down the road because, I can't even get LibreTax to install. I can't bear to try. And I feel like anybody that I'm going to hire to try and help me with my taxes is going to charge me over $1,000, and I'm not going to have that money. So, it's really terrifying to try and go through this stuff because, okay, maybe I could figure out the button that lets you download all your transactions. Sure, I could do that. But, when each currency is being exchanged, it's worth a certain amount at that time, and then trying to go through all that stuff. So what do you recommend for poor schlubs like me that are stuck with a mediocre QuickBooks accounting system that doesn't really take into account Bitcoin stuff? So what are some really easy steps that people could do at home? And then where would you call in the big guns, you being the big guns?
Well, actually, what you just prefaced there is actually, you really kind of nailed the whole thing. You nailed the whole landscape around being able to account for cryptocurrency transactions, Bitcoin included. So that's really what it comes down to. I think everything about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is completely amazing. Every day I find out something new. I think it's like the greatest thing, the greatest technology that I've seen. But the one interesting thing is that when it comes to the accounting and the taxation side, or accounting for transactions, because taxation is like a subset of accounting, that's really actually a mess. It's a nightmare, actually. And this is from, I think, my unique point of view, because I'm down in the trenches working with it and seeing it. So for those people that really haven't done that, they might not really get that. But that's my point of view, that it's a complete nightmare. Now, fortunately, there are some tools like LibreTax and a few others that can help manage this. And if there were not any tools or technologies like that, it would be almost impossible to be able to account for and manage these transactions. So just like you said, it can actually be cost prohibitive to be able to hire somebody to manage transactions. Now, you don't really have to even have that much activity for it to get fairly complicated. Now, it could be a fairly simple, because you may have, maybe you have Coinbase, and then maybe you have blockchain.info, and I say you, I'm talking about the proverbial you. You were the audience. And maybe you only had Bitcoin and no other cryptocurrencies involved. That would be a more simple scenario. However, you could have also, any of the more popular wallets. You could have Counter Wallet, you could have Coinbase, you could have blockchain. Just think about whatever the landscape is that you could have, which I have them all. So you could have transactions scattered everywhere among all of these different wallets, and then also add in that you've got other coins or other cryptocurrencies. Say you got another, you got Bitcoin, then you have another 10, 15. You do that, and then that even complicates it even more. So even on the simple side of the spectrum there, it can still be complicated enough that to figure it out, it can end up being cost prohibitive. Now, what I mean by that is what's the cost benefit? So you may have all these transactions, and then you crunch it down, and then it spits out a number, and really, as far as most of it's going to be around calculating capital gains and losses. So for individuals, that's going to be like Schedule D on 1040. Businesses essentially do the same thing, but it's really like, what was your net gain or loss? Now, if it might be a net loss of $100, it could cost you $1,000 to calculate that you have a net loss of a net loss of $100, and that actually is not in the IRS's benefit. So in other words, if you didn't report the $100, that's not taking anything away from the IRS, if that makes sense. Now, on the other hand, you might have a net gain of, say, $300. Again, it's really the same thing, because it cost you $1,000 to figure out that there's really a small gain. And considering that added into most people's income, it's really materially insignificant, whether it's there or not. So that's the challenge about this, is that yes, it could be cost prohibitive to figure this out. So then most people are left with, well, I have to figure this out for myself. How do I do that? And so what you described there is really a great example of what could be typical, I think, a typical experience for most people, whether they're individuals or businesses.
Right, but save me from myself, because, yeah, I know the problem. Now, what's the solution? I mean, seriously, what do people do? I was thinking of getting some foreign laborers, but even they don't know Bitcoin. There's like 10 accountants that I know that know Bitcoin, and that's it. And like, I love you, but I can't afford. And also, I mean, when you give an accountant stuff, right? I give my regular accountant my regular stuff. I tell him, okay, this is what I made, blah, blah. I can't even hand this off to him.
Right. Well, so first of all, just a side note is what you're talking about is to solve this. One of the things I've come up with which is in addition to the book, we have a companion site, and that was the original vision of the whole book. Anyway, there would be a companion site to supplement many of the things covered in the book. And so when I got done with the book project and started to work on the site, I said, well, what would be the most practical things that would solve real issues that people have today, and taxes being one of those, and there's a couple others. So the first thing that I worked on to tackle was, well, let's create a free tax course. So I've got the first part of that, and I'm actually going to be publishing the second part 2 of that shortly. And then if that might actually get people where they need to go. So basically, because what happens is I'll talk to people about what their challenge is, and actually sometimes just a 1-hour conversation might give them enough information that they can go on their way and figure this stuff out. So what I find myself doing is repeating conversations over and over again. I was like, hey, let's create the free course, and then people can just go there and take that. And then it might get to be the point where they say, no, I still need more help. And then, so the idea is to then, if the free course doesn't do it, then let's say it's a $97 self-serve course where you could then guide yourself and then figure this stuff out. Now you may get to the end of that and say, well, I still can't figure it out, I need to pay somebody to do it. Or some people are just like, I just don't want to do it at all. I don't care how much it costs. I don't want to do this. So people are kind of all over the board with that. But anyway, so these things, it would not be possible to solve these unless you've got a platform like LibreTax, or there's also Bitcoin.tax, and there's also cointracking.info. So these are things.
What's your assessment of those 3 platforms? I think that you're friends with the LibreTax guy, so we'll just put that on the side.
Yeah.
Tell me which ones are the best and why, or like what are different feature sets of each that make them better than the other.
Well, I think they're all great. I don't necessarily want to just to be completely objective, because that's what I do as a CPA, is to bring objectivity to it. So I think that it's one of those things. It's what I recommend with not only tax accounting platforms, but also any platform. You've got to sign up and you need to use and try out the different ones. You got to take them all for a test drive. And a lot of times it's because the strategy may be to find out which one you like better, but also you just need alternatives. You need to not be stuck in one, because sometimes you have to move to another, whether it's a wallet or an exchange, right? So you got to test drive all these different ones. So a lot of these will give you the ability to calculate taxes, but probably just as important, they also have some degree of a what I call a Bitcoin dashboard. So the calculating taxes is really looking at what happened in the past, whereas a dashboard is where am I at today in this moment, and where what the future looks like. So you can see. So if you have Bitcoin, would be simple, because it would just be like, how much Bitcoin do I have and how much is it worth right now. But if you're into lots of different coins, which I am, you may have 10, 15, 20 different coins, and you want to have a dashboard to see, well, how many coins do I have? What's it worth right now? What is my unrealized gain or loss? So in other words, I've got, let's say it's BitShares, it's worth $1,000, and I bought it for however many BitShares for $250, so right now I have a $750 potential gain. So if I was to sell it right now, I would know, my dashboard would tell me, hey, I've got a $750 gain I could realize, and you may want to go ahead and sell that for various different reasons. And by the way, you don't necessarily, just because you have a gain doesn't, or loss, you could actually want to, a good strategy may include taking advantage of a gain or loss. It depends. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So those are two distinct things to understand. You've got calculating transactions to take care of the past, and then you've also got looking at what do I have right now, and and going into the future to make. So it's for decision making as well as for handling transactions. Now, some of them may allow you to, again, if you had the more popular exchanges or wallets or universal platforms, like you have a Coinbase, you may be able to automatically link that so that you don't have to import any transactions. The transactions just show up. Blockchain.info, transactions may just show up, but they're limited on the ones that are automatic like that. So again, the more you have your Bitcoin transactions spread out in your own personal landscape as far as different wallets, the more you're going to have to capture those, typically in a CSV file, which is, I think most people know what CSV file is, right? Like Excel file. You have to, that's typically what most transactions is going to come down to, being able to export your transactions into that file, and then you have to do something with it. You may have to massage it. You may have to, before you import it, you may be able to just import it directly, and so forth. So some of these things I'm saying, each of these platforms has a different variation of these different feature sets. And you may be able to, in some cases, you may be able to choose what type of inventory method is used for the tax calculation. So in other words, FIFO and LIFO, which is first in, first out, last in, first out, or specific identification, or average cost. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and it depends on really your jurisdiction, whether it's the U.S. or another country. As to FIFO is the most typical method to calculate taxes. So it just means and it's kind of like inventory. That most people associate that with inventory. In this case, it really is inventory. Every one of your Bitcoin purchases is really like a part of inventory, even though it's intangible. It's not like goods. So that's another feature. You can click on whether or not you want to use FIFO or you want to use one of the other types of, one of the other methods to do that. You can also, in some cases, just put in a tax rate if it's another country. So really, the exercise, because FIFO is the most common, and the exercise of the system doing the calculations, all it really needs to know is like, what's the tax rate? So in some cases, you have the option to just put in the tax rate for your specific country. So that way, it's not necessarily, it might not be necessarily U.S. based and things like that. So those are some of the different things to consider. So again, what it's going to come down to is you having to, again, if you have lots of transactions on lots of different platforms, you're going to have to manage exporting the transactions into a CSV file, and then and then in some cases you can just re-import it into the tax program, but you may have to do some massaging to it. Like you may have to adjust the columns. Sometimes you can get tripped up by the dates, like the date format, because the U.S. uses a date format that's different basically than the rest of the world, and so you may have to do that. So there is a bit of an art to it. And so that's where we are looking to, what I think is provide something unique, which is, you either hire somebody for $1,000, and it really doesn't take long to get to that point, because it really actually takes a lot of time to manage this stuff, to figure this stuff out. And so one of the challenges too is when you're in these platforms, what's typical is you have, in the transactions, you need to tag it, like, was the transaction a buy? Was it a sell? Was it income? Was it a gift? Which is really a subset of buy-sell. I'm not sure why, but they tend to distinguish that. And then you've also got transfer. So a transfer is a non-taxable event, because it's the same as transferring cash from one bank account to another, except in this case it's from one Bitcoin wallet to another. However, you still need to identify it that way. So what happens is if you've done a poor job, again, the proverbial you and your audience, if you've done a poor job of capturing what the transaction was for along the way, and then you have to go back, it's going to be really a pain in the butt. So one of the biggest things to do is, and this is just in general with all business transactions and personal transactions, just make sure to document. Like, you can never over document. So if there's a transaction, you have a memo field, always put in there, make a memo of what the transaction was for. Now, the other challenge is some platforms don't give you the option to make a memo. So if you have transactions running through a particular platform or a wallet, you may not be able to make a memo of it. So like what I do is I actually kind of I use blockchain.info as kind of my central hub of transactions, and I'll actually a lot of times create more work because I'll send Bitcoins to it, but I always want to have all my crypto transactions flowing through there because I'm able to put a memo in there, as well as blockchain is blockchain.info also a platform for that you'll need to send Bitcoins. Like, for instance, if you're going to be invested in a crowd sale, you can't send Bitcoins from Coinbase, or you won't get credit in the way the technology works. You won't get credit. So there's many reasons to use the platform. So I just tend to make all the transactions go through there so you can have a memo line. So that's going to be one of the key things. If you end up going back to look and say, well, I don't have this transaction identified, it could be a real challenge because you don't know what it was for. So, and what I mean by that is, because a lot of times what will happen is if you import these transactions into a LibreTax and there's no memo, it might say buy or sell. And the question is, a sell can mean several things. It could say, yeah, I guess it could say buy or sell, but like sell, for instance, may indicate one of three things. It could be you may have sent it to another wallet. It could be a transfer. It could be a sale where you actually sold the Bitcoin for fiat currency, for US dollars, or it could be a purchase for an expense. So it's really like a sell, or maybe it might be send. It depends on the platform, sell or send. So it could actually mean one of three things. And if you didn't make a memo, you don't know what it's for. And if you don't properly tag it as buy, send, or sell, or income, or gift, or transfer, your taxes are never going to calculate correctly. The critical thing is to make sure that what the transaction type was is tagged correctly. And if it's tagged correctly, then you can calculate the capital gains correctly. So just because you have all your so if you had, for example, let's say you had 900 total transactions for the year 2015. You went through the exercise of making an inventory list. I have all these wallets, all these exchanges, and then you export all of the CSV files or automatically link it, however you do it, and you have 900 transactions. You get all 900 transactions into your tax reporting platform. Just because you now have a transaction completeness, meaning that all the transactions are in there, that doesn't mean it's going to calculate correctly, which goes back to what I'm talking about. You have to tag it correctly as a buy, sell, income, transfer, like that. There's a drop-down box that they typically have. So that's what's critical is tagging it that way.
Okay, so I'm no longer accepting Bitcoin. Sorry. What the hell? I mean, you're telling me this, and I just started looking at my face on the video, and for the people that can't see, this is depressing. I mean, this is exhausting just listening to the explanation. No offense to you, I think you're doing a great job, but I mean, I don't know. I think that this maybe leaves an opportunity for people to offer some sort of more ongoing accounting services. This happens to be something that you guys do. It sounded like I was like shamelessly plugging you guys, but I actually think that when you told me about this is a really good service because yeah, I mean, just listening to this is terrifying, and it makes me never want to accept Bitcoin. And
yes, I can understand that, but at the same time, that's why I wanted to create a free course. Which, again, part of the first two parts of the course anyway are kind of some fundamentals. But I believe if you just take a little, and we're not talking about that much time here. Like part 1 is 15 minutes. Part 2, which is going to be published shortly, is going to be about 15 or 20 minutes, and then there's going to be other segments. So you're not talking about having to invest that much time. But I've attempted to do it in such a way that maybe goes back and covers more stuff than people think they need to know. But if you just invest the time to really understand that, it'll build you up and then have a better understanding in the long run about exactly what I'm talking about here with this whole tagging transactions. So I'm kind of rolling it back a bit to dig down in some of the fundamentals, and then when you get to the point of, oh, is this a buy or is this a sell, and so forth. So it can be confusing when you are also when you tag these trends. Just one other thing to hit, this one tidbit on nugget about how you can get tripped up on this transaction tagging. So when you would have buy, okay, what buy is referring to is buying Bitcoin. Okay, so you had your US dollars and you bought Bitcoin. That's what that's referring to. However, it's confusing because when you think of buy, we use that word in common practice as well. I buy stuff. I went to the store and I bought stuff. I went to Staples and I bought office supplies. So that's actually, or purchase. We use that word too. But buy is referring to buying Bitcoins with US dollars, but when you're making a purchase or you're buying stuff, it's actually, you're tagging the transaction as a sell. You're selling Bitcoin, essentially, to then you're selling the Bitcoin, I guess, simultaneously for US dollars and then go buy the stuff with. So it's just the fact that we use words in common practice and think of the meaning as one way, and what it means in the platform is slightly different, and so that can trip people up, and that's the kind of stuff that is, to me, just that whole realm around what I'm describing now sounds really confusing. That's what we're going to attempt to do, is to really clarify that, because that's where people can get confused around these little things like this. So I think that it is possible for somebody to, even though it sounds intimidating and sounds daunting and hey, like you said, I don't know if I want to, joking about, I don't want to accept Bitcoin anymore, but really, if you just, once you understand it, it actually is oh, okay, I get it. It's not that bad after all.
Well, yeah, but if you hire somebody to be your accountant that's not from your team, or not somebody, internally, there's people that leave the company and they go off and do their own thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious to try out the free course and see what happens. And I think you should continue to develop those kinds of courses, even if they're more hardcore for professionals, where they can watch them from home. Because I think that that's an opportunity for accounting firms to grow their base, is to be able to handle this extremely complicated process for people. Yeah, it's pretty daunting.
So, yeah, again, the whole point here is, really the way I like to do it is to really offer it so it's whatever works for somebody. So again, in a lot of cases, a 1 hour conversation is enough for what people need to know, and then they're on their way, and they're good. They don't need to spend any money. So again, free courses like that, because that's like having this, instead of having the same conversation over again, people can self-serve, and then they might say, well, I need a little bit more. Okay, so $97 value, that's like hiring a professional for 1 hour or less.
Totally.
And so there's it's like a total value play. And again, somebody might get to the point where, you know what, I tried to do it and I can't, and it's just, my stuff's complicated, I need some help. That might happen. Or some people just are always I don't care how much it costs, I don't want to have to deal with it. So people get there that way as well.
Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna check out the free class for now and see how it goes, and then maybe decide to go on from there. I mean, time is ticking, so people need to kind of do that. Where can they pick up your book, and where can people listen to the videos and watch the videos that you've created?
Yeah, the site is thebitcoincpa.com.
Okay.
It's what we're calling the Ultimate Bitcoin Business Series, which is obviously a takeoff of the Ultimate Bitcoin Business Guide, the book. And so if you go to the Bitcoin CPA, there's a tab there that says book, and it's got all the links to the various places where the book is. And actually, Stephanie Murphy is just now finishing the audiobook, and I thought she did a brilliant job on bringing the book to life. I was blown away at how good I thought it sounded. I was hoping the writing had something to do with it, but I was like, man, she really does a fantastic job.
She's great. She's on the show this week, actually. I'm excited. She'll be on Thursday. We're doing a bonus episode with her.
Oh, that's cool. So I'm a huge audiobook fan. I love audiobooks, so I was like, I have to get this done in audiobook. I thought she was the perfect person. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's there, as well as the courses are there. The courses are still a work in process. It takes a lot of time to really develop something, to think it out that it's going to provide value to somebody, and you're not going too far off into the weeds and stuff like that. So would love to hear your feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds really good. Okay, cool. So I guess that's the end of the show for today. Do you have any other final words of wisdom or parting for our audience?
Well, I would say yes, I do. As a matter of fact, first of all, I've noticed that over the years, people tend to panic over April the 15th, like it's like something terrible is going to happen if you don't finish taxes by then. I think most people know this, but then it seems like, well, there's a lot of people that don't. So you can always file an extension, 4868, a one-page form extension.
But is that for your business or is that only for your personal?
Well, that's for personal. Now, the one thing you can never file an extension to extend the time to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's only for completing the return. So
Okay.
you can be you're either underpaid or overpaid, hopefully overpaid, but you still need to sort out the information and file the taxes. So for businesses, those are typically March the 15th for corporations, S corporations, LLCs, partnerships, like that. So the one thing is on that, if you're a business owner and you have any of those business entities and you have not filed an extension, it's critical to get that done because there's severe penalties now for not filing those. And so what I mean by that is that most of these returns they don't pay any tax except for a C corporation, which is what most large Fortune 500 companies are C corporations. Most smaller businesses, when they file those returns, they're only informational returns, meaning that there's no tax paid. The tax is paid on the individual level. So the trade-off is, because they say you're not paying any tax and it's informational, we need to have that on a timely basis. And I guess people used to slack a lot on filing these returns. So the last 4 or 5 years, they've initiated these penalties to the tune of $195 per partner or per shareholder per month. So
When are those due?
Say again?
When are those due?
Well, they're due on March the 15th, but you can again file a 6-month extension through September the 15th. But
Okay.
if you've missed the extension, it's now critical to get into gear, because every month that you go by, let's say for example, if you had 6 partners, and so you're already going to have, March is going to be late if you didn't file it. So 6 times 195, that's going to be $1,200. In April, another $1,200. May, another $1,200 for every month that you let go by that you don't file it. So it's critical. And I've seen people like and actually this in 2016, I believe the penalty's gone up even higher. I'm not sure what it is right now, but 195 per partner or shareholder is bad enough. I've actually seen clients disregard this to the tune of having thousands of dollars in penalties. I'm talking like 5, 6, 7, even $10,000 in penalties from nothing. Literally, there was no tax paid. It was just not filing the return on time, and then having these giant $1,000 tax liabilities. So that's what's critical. There's no need to panic if you can file the extension and you've got 6 months.
What's the filing of the extension? I just wrote down your website. So
Yeah, 4868.
Form 4868.
4868.
Okay, instructions electronically, right? I could file that.
I believe the IRS just now has some new payment methods on there that they've just added, and you may be able to do that. It's very simple. It's name, address, social security number, and amount. If you owe anything, you may not owe. It may just be just filing the extension.
Okay, well I'm gonna try and work on this. What if you miss the extension because it was 7 days ago? Can you file it now, or are you just screwed?
Well, yeah, for businesses from the 15th, no, you can't file it late.
Oh,
there are some exceptions to it. It is possible to file late. There is an exception to it, but that's beyond the scope of the. My point is, if you missed it, get in the gear as fast as possible to get the return filed. Individuals, it might not be as painful because you may have all your tax paid in. It's not going to happen like that for an individual. I'm talking about businesses where it's that kind of really nasty penalty.
This has been the most terrifying episode of the Tatiana Show I've ever had. I know you tried to make it less scary, but it's like you're the dad and you open up the closet. You're like, look, there's nothing in there. There's like 8 monsters waiting to catch it. So on that happy note, everybody file your taxes, especially if you work with Bitcoin because I don't know. I feel like I wonder how the government will handle all the poor schlubs that are trying to file their Bitcoin taxes right now because it's such a nightmare and the text isn't like that available for the average person. You know, I mean, hopefully they've listened to the show and they've learned something, but I don't know. Hopefully they won't. Maybe if they listen to this show, like the government or whatever, they could be like, "Wow, this is hard."
Yeah, well, I've actually written an article about this. The crux of my article is that although I believe that the IRS arrived at was their conclusion about how to tax it and everything, to me it's like, yeah, that makes sense, it's logical, but really looking at it from a cost benefit perspective, I guarantee they're going to spend more money trying to train people and try to figure out how to handle this stuff on tax returns than the benefit that they're going to get from tax revenue. That's just my personal opinion about it. One other point that might be valuable for you about the frustration about how can I get all this done without having to spend $1,000 to hire somebody and that type of thing. Another thing that can happen is that trying to get a handle on this for the first time may be that you may just be having to get over that kind of pain point, and once you do that, then you may be able to handle it on your own from there. And what I mean by that is once you get set up in a LibreTax or another platform, once you get set up there the first time, then it can kind of like take care of itself, and then you can know how to. First of all, if you have some of the wallets automatically linked, then that will take care of it. But I've had that happen where I've helped people out, and we get it set up, and then they take it from there. So it doesn't necessarily have to happen every year. It might be the first year you kind of got to get over that pain point.
Okay, because everybody that I know in Bitcoin is just bored, sitting around thinking, what shall I do with my time? I feel like everybody that I know lately is on the edge of death because everybody's working so hard. I do think this is going to be a big year, though, for everyone, and I hope that we can all keep our heads above water until then. But this has been really, really informative. I'm glad that we did it a little bit before the 15th. We had you scheduled a little bit later, so this was probably very helpful for people. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to Ed for coming to me from LivelyGig. Kirk, one more time, what's your website?
TheBitcoinCPA.com.
All right, great. And everybody, my stuff is TatianaMoroz.com, and I have CryptoMediaHub.com. If you want to check us out, we're on all sorts of different networks. So just go to my website and you can find out more. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Peace out. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.